Hey guys, welcome. I'm going to see if I can remember how to do this anymore. I'm Pete Bickford. This is the ComicBase Livestream, and it's been a while, so thank you all for showing up here. As you guys can tell, this is going to be, I was just telling, backstage, I was telling our mod, Gregory Hecht, that I can tell it's going to be a scattered show, and I looked up, and the second I said it, I was like, oh my god, 35 seconds of showtime. Gotta get going. Anyway, guys, hey, welcome. This is the ComicBase Livestream, believe it or not. This is where we talk about all things comic-basey. We're going to be talking a lot of comic news and everything like that, and a lot of talking about how, for the last 3-4 weeks, we haven't been doing these because I've been busy breaking everything in sight. So we'll talk about what all that clanking was all about and get into it a bit. So anyway, before we do, I do want to say thank you to the folks who are coming here. It looks like Rich Scott, first in the house. It's like he is. Damn, I knew this. I was going to happen. Okay, I don't know what happened, but I'm glad you're here. Oro Viejo was checking in from Minneapolis. It's apparently having a lovely time out there before everything gets too hot and humid to breathe. Our aforementioned moderators in the house, of course. Department of Comics is joining us from Northeast Florida. And let's see. He has our questions for us already. Can I go over how to get those freshly entered items so that the labels can be printed all at once? Yes, I will happy to do that. I actually put that down as one of the tech tips I wanted to cover today. So thank you for that. Jet T Comics joins us, I believe from Portlandish area. I hope I've got that right. My mind is gone. Anyway, so Rob Weinberg says, we missed you, Pete. It's kind of like when your kid goes off to college and they finally come home for Thanksgiving. Oh my God. By the way, I'm going to know more about that as we go here. Among the things that happened the last 3 weeks is my youngest kid just graduated from MTSU. So if you know I was looking for a freshly minted biologist, please put your notes in the comments, and we'll kick back as appropriate for any job leads. Anyway, let's see here. And also please, thank you to everyone who said please don't forget to smash the like button. Of course, it's very important. We have a thematic show going on here, and some requests to do ComicBase After Dark. We'll talk about it at some point. Chris Persol, Rainy here in Philly. By the way, Chris, I think I owe you an invite onto our Slack group. I apologize for that if so. But I know there was one person who sent a request in, and I put it in. It was literally when I had like a 73 windows open of things that were compiling and processing and stuff like that, and it was like, I'm gonna have to get back to this guy, and I realized I have not. So if that was you, I apologize, and I will get back to you as quickly as I can. Pablo Rennie Legaspi from Northern California, Bay Area, Santa Cruz, California. Welcome to the show. And oh, hey, Ed's in the house as well. So anyway, and Ording, Washington. I was close-ish, on Jet City. Okay, so all right. So anyway, guys, thank you, everyone. Let's get onto some news. And this, like I say, forgive me, my mind is in 100 places today. I'm trying to organize it, but I was even trying to write out the notes ahead of time and say, because I have show notes that I'm usually reading off of as we do these things that try to keep me somewhat focused, so I don't just babble endlessly. And you can see how well that works out. But even as I was trying to put just the topic areas together, it's like, there's not necessarily a logical flow to a lot of these topics, so I'm doing the best I can. But I apparently decided, after various shuffles around, that the number one item I wanted to talk about was barcode scanners. I think this had something to do with tariffs, actually, which unfortunately, despite spending about a year trying solidly to source these things from U.S., it turns out that nobody in America makes barcode scanners, even Motorola and things like that. You say, well, where do your parts come from? And the answer was not here. So apparently there's only like 3 countries in the entire world that make barcode scanners. And unfortunately, they're not always in the places you want them to be. But we found at least a really, really good barcode scanner after trying dozens of different models. And so I did want to say, we do still have barcode scanners in stock. They are subject to this tariffy fun that's been going on, which, if you guys haven't been keeping up with the scoreboard lately, I think we had it at 115% tariffs, which then got knocked down for the next 87 days or so to 30% tariffs, which then God knows what's going to happen after that. But we still have some stock, and that's the good news. Unlike BCW, which I got a note from them saying that when we wanted to reorder our comic supplies, because we go through a fair number of bags and boards, as I'm sure all of you do as well. But just because we kind of order one of everything to fuel the database, we go through a lot of them around here. We got a note saying that, Mr. Wholesaler, our prices are going up. They used to have, I think, like a 30% tariff markup they were going to add on. They said, well, good news, it's down to 10% markup, and we'll keep you posted. We care about your profits, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, back in ComicBase land, I will say this. We've made the decision that whatever we have in stock in terms of scanners, we're selling out at the prices we listed. We're not going to make any adjustments. We're going to do this as best we can and just kind of hope for the future. And when they sell out, we will find a way to get more, but the price might not be the same. We're going to, we're going to price whatever it takes to still be able to clear a little bit of money on them. But we'll make them as cheap as we can. But no promises on that one. So if you're thinking of getting a barcode scanner, now would be an excellent time to get them, I guess is what I mean to say with all this, floovering around or whatever I'm doing. The other thing I want to say is, after popular request, one thing that, if you have the wireless barcode scanner, let me get up my demo here. If you have this guy right here, lovely little guy, but one thing about it is it's wireless because it talks to a little tiny USB dongle that plugs into any USB slot on your computer, and that is lovely. Until, as it turns out, because they're very small, they wind up being like those headphones you've got, the earbuds. Apparently, some people have found them easy to lose if you take them out for some reason and then, I don't know, dump your desk on the floor. Whatever the reason, we've had a couple people who've come back and said, oh, yeah, I love the barcode scanner. I've lost the dongle. Do you have any spares? And the answer up until just now has been, no, we don't. Anyway, we did manage to get a small supply of spare dongles. So if you're one of the people who was missing a dongle and we said, I don't know, we'll talk to the manufacturer and see if we can get some. The answer is we have a few. It's a very few. I think the number is 5. But if you need one of those, please reach out to us. The deal I will give you is this. We will send one to you for $15 inclusive of shipping, and we're going to ship them until we don't have them. So if you need one, just reach out, send an email to pbickford@human-computing.com. I'll put that up on the screen. It should be there right now. But basically $15 and you got one, and please don't lose them. One thing I've actually done, if you guys have one of those Dymo label makers, very, very handy, because they're not the only thing that has a dongle on it. Like your Logitech mouse might have one, things like that. The dongle that comes with the barcode scanner is very helpfully labeled dongle, which is the stupidest thing ever. This is not my design, but I would suggest putting a little label sticky on the edge of it. Just tells you something like scanner or something, so you remember what the heck it's for. Because between your cordless mouse, your cordless keyboard, your cordless whatever the heck you've got on there, it'd be good to remember which one goes to your cordless wireless scanner, just in case if you need to pop that thing out and put it anyplace else. But anyway, that's the story on the barcode scanners, and we'll do that. Other news on the barcode scanners. The latest batch that we got in them, they actually updated the firmware on them, and it's actually pretty interesting what they've managed to do. So the actual specs on the scanner itself, they managed to actually double the resolution of the imaging element, and along with that, they have some new firmware tricks it can do. If you like Scanner Geek trivia, there's an updated technical manual which we've now posted to the website. It's the wired version is called the DX4 laser scanner. The wireless one is the Mark II wireless scanner. If you go to our website, go to the support section for barcode setup, you'll see both the revised easy setup sheet as well as the full technical manual. And I don't know about you, but I think it's actually kind of interesting to look at all the configuration settings on your barcode scanner and seeing all the crazy numbers of things that this thing can scan and not scan, and the ways you can configure it. You can change the beep tone and and all sorts of crazy things about it. So have a look on the website if that's the sort of thing that interests you. Typically, because these things are laser scanners, you typically can't just scan your screen, because your screen probably has a coating on it that is not going to make the laser come back the way that your scanner is looking for it. You'll want to print that out and then scan the printed version of it. CCD scanners typically work pretty well going off of screens, but laser scanners typically do not. So anyway, have a look at that, and we'll see how it goes. Let me see here. ComicBase TV says, if you already have a scanner, is it possible to update the firmware for it? Not to my knowledge. So I think they with the latest batch of scanners, if you have the Mark II models or the DX3 models, it's actually different. It's not just firmware; it's actually different imaging elements. It's actually different hardware inside them. But apparently, they did. The reason I mentioned the firmware is the latest batch of them that they sent out to us. They apparently did a firmware update. If you bleep the thing, it tells you the firmware version. It comes out with a different number. But one thing that I really was not thrilled about is they changed one of the codes. There was a code for suppressing the space that was, by default, the scanner was putting a space between the supplemental and the regular code. Now, ComicBase doesn't care. It'll scan that out anyway. It scans fine with it from within ComicBase. But there was one customer who was using it to scan things elsewhere in his shop, and the old code for configuring whether or not that was going to have a space before the supplemental wasn't working for us, and it was causing him grief, and which then was causing us grief. And then we said, what the hell, guys, why did you change the firmware for something like that and not tell us, because this kind of jams us up. Anyway, so along with resolving that situation, we also got access to lots of new cool technical info and stuff like that. So everything's been updated. If you do need to configure your scanner, if you download the latest setup sheets, they are updated and will do what they need to. But they're also, like I say, have a look at the technical manual, because they added a bunch of stuff. When we were first sourcing the scanners, we had requirements on there, for instance, that you had to be able to either because comic books all use, it's called an EAN 13 +2 or +5. In other words, it has a 2 or 5 digit supplemental at the end. It's a smaller batch of barcode characters, because basically every comic book you're going to see has that code in it, because manufacturers use that code to denote the issue number, the variant, and typically the language or the printing. They reuse the code parts, but if they have the +5, they those things have meanings, and so having the base barcode without seeing the supplemental is a problem. So one of the requirements we had when sourcing the scanner is, look, your scanner either has to be able to natively hit 95% of the scans that we give it to on the first try. In other words, it picks up the full scan, including the supplemental, without having to do a rescan. Or it has to have a way to force the supplemental. In other words, when you hold down the button on the scanner, that it doesn't beep and say, I've got the code, until it sees the supplemental. Either one of those would have been sufficient for us to accept it for the thing, but almost nobody had a parameter to force the supplemental. That's something that we did with our much older scanners that we used to use. But anyway, that's been added in, and a number of other features have been added in as well. So should you want to configure your barcode scanner to do lots of weird, crazy things, that is an option for you. Have a look at the book, and you can see what your baby can do. Anyway, so that is a way too long spending on this one. Let me see here. Greg Hicks says, at one point, Bags Unlimited said their comic bags were not made in the USA. If that's still true, yeah, it clearly is. I remember during COVID, when we needed to get resupplies of bags, it was like waiting for shipping containers to make it across the ocean. And it was like, yeah, we'll have new supplies in like 4 or 5 months. It's like, okay, glad we order them in the quantities we do, and I'm glad I'm talking to you months ahead of when I need them. So, but yeah, if you were, the height of COVID, everyone got very sensitive about their supply chains, and I know we did as well. And so we definitely home warehouse more stuff than we ever did before COVID. But even then, I gotta admit, would prefer a retailer with supplies closer to home, however we make it. So anyone who's in the bag, board, or barcoding businesses or wants to start one up, I'm just telling you, you'd have a eager customer should you want to shore them closer to home. Just saying. All right. So with all that said, let's move on to other businessy matters. Okay, Diamond Comics. I actually have a graphic for this one. Let me go ahead and put it up here if I can switch over. Okay, boom. Diamond Comic Distribution is kind of, I don't know what they're going to be called, but they are no longer under the ownership of Steve Jeppy and company. They have been sold. This was the day that the bankruptcy is due to be finalized. As far as I can tell, it has been finalized. I haven't seen an announcement, but anyway, I have not seen an announcement that it has been called off. So I'm assuming it is now all over but the shouting. The deal on that one is it got sold off. Part of the business got sold off to a consortium of universal distributors, and the other half got sold off to a group calling themselves Ad Populum. I think one of them had to do with the card business and so forth. There's a number of diamond companies that were a part of the bankruptcy deal. I want to say something like 11 different sub companies, including a grading service for toys, which I never even knew they had until the bankruptcy things. Alliance Game Distributors was one of the early bidders in the whole thing, and rather notoriously had bid quite a bit more than Ad Populum and Universal Distribution wound up paying for them in this latest round. But they wound up pulling out at the end because they found out, well, there were many allegations about the nature of the disclosure documents. I'm going to actually do something I never do, and I'm going to refer you to bleedingcool.com. Rich Johnston has been doing yeoman's work on covering the bankruptcy proceedings, and anything I would be saying here would just be repeating something he's written at this point, because he seems to be about the one guy who's bothering to cover the story in any kind of decent format. So do head on over to Bleeding Cool, and you can see the whole sad, sorry state of the bankruptcy filing. I have not followed a ton of bankruptcy proceedings. I'm guessing this one might have been a tad messier than some. But yeah, the lawyers are definitely getting paid off of this one. So anyway, but look, I wish Steve Jeppe Godspeed. I think he's been a good guy, and we've had business dealings, kind of almost had business dealings, and we've certainly been a customer of his for all these years, and we still are. I think the office folks put in our diamond order just last week for the next coming month. So. And certainly, for the time being, that is certainly where a great deal of the comic books that go into ComicBase come from. And yeah, there's ups and downs, damages, not damages. It's a flawed world, but I think he's still done a credible job of dealing with a very difficult to ship, package, manage, etc. collectible, and I wish him all the best. So if he's not doing that anymore, Steve was once a postman, and that's before he went to the distribution game, and so he has a long history of getting packages where they need to go. So I wish him Godspeed with his efforts. I believe he's still a part owner of the Orioles, and hopefully he can spend more time with the grandkids or something. But anyway, we will have a new boss in that field as we go forward, and we'll see what happens. All right, so moving on from that one. Back with ComicBase land, I have a number of shout outs that I've been told, if I'm editorial, that yes, you must on the live stream say thank you very much to everyone who's been giving us data on newsstand editions, in no particular order, because you guys all deserve a hell of a lot of credit. And I know I'm going to realize my fear is I'm going to have left out somebody very important on this one, but Steve Dazinger, Robert Weinberg, Robert Wood, Frank Colasurdo, Alan DeCamp, Gregory Hecht, and everyone else who has contributed all the information that we've needed in order to figure out which items have had newsstand editions, which have not, etc. You have been absolutely flooding our editorial folks for the last probably 6 weeks on this stuff, and they're pretty much on top of it. But it's been a lot of work. As far as we can tell, there's something on the nature of around 46 to 48,000 issues involved, and we very much appreciate everyone who has helped us get that done, and get it done in such a short period of time. You guys have contributed covers. You've told us where we've gotten covers wrong. You've figured out which things that we thought had newsstand issues likely did not. We're not sure, etc. Thank you. It's all I can say. And that leads me to the next thing, which of course is, well, for some reason I put getting updates next on the list, but I'm going to skip that one for a second and go on to picture rebuilding and melting down servers. As you guys might have noticed, so once upon a time, which is to say about 8 weeks ago, ComicBase for the last million years, along with the Overstreet Price Guide and things like that, we treated things that came in through newsstand distribution and that came in through direct distribution. We treated them as essentially, not particularly, distinguishable for collectibility purposes. The market basically had disagreed, and after basically it became known that Overstreet was planning, space depending on their online thing, to start tracking them as separate items. They're basically our last hope of being the guys to, to treat them as a separate, is not, a separate thing. That went away. We bit the bullet and I figured, okay, let's take our medicine and take it hard. So we did that, and we suddenly spun out, and you guys noticed that we suddenly grew another 48,000 or so variants in ComicBase, covering the newsstand versus not newsstand versions of comics published from about 1980 to 2015, give or take, is the rough time frame. From especially Marvel, DC, there was some Archie, there was some Valiant, there were a few others, but yeah, basically the entire output of that one, except when they weren't, was published in both of those editions. Now, at some point, we all can look forward to the day when they'll figure out that it wasn't just newsstand; there were actually different newsstand distributors. Someone will make that one into a thing in a while, but at the moment, that hasn't happened yet, so we don't need to further variant out the case until we get down to the. Eventually, we're all going to be at the Blitmap thing, where literally every comic is its own variant. Which, by the way, if you guys don't get the reference, look up Blitmap, or is it Blitmap, in ComicBase. There's a comic company that has actually found a way to make it so literally every comic book of the run is unique in a way, in one of like 6 factors on the cover. There are no 2 comics that are published the same, and they have print runs that actually go into, I believe, at least on the initial issues, tens of thousands. So yes, so when our until our horrible future becomes that one where literally every comic is its own unique variant, we can at least say we've caught up with the world in terms of catching up with the variantness of that. But one of the prices of that is certain issues. So let's say the best copy we had of Avengers number 181, let's say that it was just happened to be a newsstand cover. That was the nicest scan we had of Avengers number 181. Well, suddenly that's 181, the default became that's the direct market one. So now we had to have a new cover for 181/NS, which would be the newsstand version. And so we would have to, first of all, find an image of that one and put it out there. But then we also had to say get rid of the old cover for 181 if it was not the proper one. And so this means that we had to, first of all, replace a ton of things with our main servers of replacing cover images, and we'll probably be shagging down odd pictures that are the newsstand versus not the newsstand one. Those will probably be popping up for a little while yet. I'm not saying we've hit the last of those yet, even though a lot of people have done a lot of work to get us on the good side of that one. But one thing about the way that we serve up pictures is it turns out there's something like 1.13 million pictures in ComicBase as of the time we were speaking just now, which is a lot of pictures. Now those are our source reference library pictures. In other words, our servers, we hang on to the nicest copy that we have ever seen of the image. So if one of our guys scans the thing in at 300 DPI, and we've got this ginormous scan that's as big as you're ever going to need for anything whatsoever, that's the one that we hold on to. But it's not the one that we serve up to everyone, because it'd be ridiculous, right? This is all served as close to uncompressed as possible, quality level 12, deep color. I mean, like I say, the nicest reference one we can. And from that one, we divvy up the ones that become the thumbnails of various sizes, that become the previews on Atomic Avenue, that become the report previews in the pictures and so forth, which are, vary in size from little teeny guys like this up to, full-sized, 4K covers, if you have the 4K archive edition and you're downloading them. But if you get the 4K cover, you get the 4K cover, but you don't get like the 8K cover if we happen to have one, because it would be crazy. We would just be burning bandwidth for no reason. Well, what that means is that we have to actually pre-compute like 6 different sizes of thumbnails times 1.13 million pictures, which gets us very close to basically 8 million pictures. So I'm sorry, 7 million pictures. With that said, was it 6? I'm sorry, I take that back. There's 7 different sizes we have, because I remember it's about 8 different pre-computed sizes that we serve these up into. So it's a bit over 8 million images. So anyway, this, as you might imagine, takes a fair amount of time. And the thing we had to do here is the way we typically handle it is we say, okay, well, we know what we had from the last time we ran the compression, what's different, and we just compress all the new ones. Well, in this particular case, we had to go back, throw out all the old ones, and say, well, our old ones might be obsolete because they might be a scan of the wrong version of the cover. So one thing we started doing, and we knew we were going to have to do this, last Friday we started the process of throwing out all the pre-computed thumbnails and letting the server start recomputing them all. In other words, going back to our base picture and then, making it in the, 200 pixel tall version, the 256 tall pixel version, etc., all the way up to the 4K version, times all the pictures that we have. Now, you might imagine that doing this would take a certain amount of processor speed and time and bandwidth and all the things that computers, have in whatever supply, and you would be right. Typically, if we had to compute this whole stuff by hand, it's something that would take the better part of a week. It's just if you were going to recompute and build 8 million picture thumbs from nothing on our server. Now, we thought we're going to get ahead of the curve here a little bit. We have done various techniques over the last several months, which you've been seeing in some of the ComicBase stuff, of using multi-threading and all sorts of very bitchin' techniques to really crank up the speed of how fast we can serve these suckers up. And we turned on a fraction of that power, and we used it to the process of recomputing all the thumbnails. So on Friday around noon, I started the process of letting our web server, because the pictures are natively stored where all the thumbnails typically get served from the main web server. We have two main web servers, Superman and Batman. Our database server is Spectre, in case anyone cares. But I set Superman on the quest of, all right, let's go ahead and blow away all your existing thumbnails, and while serving the site still, I need you now to start recomputing all the thumbnails for all 8 million of these pictures. And that went okay for about 15 minutes. And then I noticed that things were getting a little hinky. And when I looked into it, I pretty quickly figured out that I threw on a hardware modder, and I noticed that, oh yeah, the CPU temperatures on Superman are hitting north of 90 degrees, 100 degrees, and I saw one brief 110 degree Celsius reading before Superman went offline. And Superman went offline because the thing that happens after 110 degrees Celsius on that particular processor is it shuts itself down to avoid melting down. Because if it didn't do that, the next thing that would happen is a fire. So anyway, okay, so start that up again. Let's go ahead and go down to the server room and look at the whole thing. Is everything optimal? Fans all running, the processor fan, everything. Yep, everything's good, but you put your hand over it and you're like, oh yeah, that sucker's really working there. And you watch it again and again. You could just watch the thermals climb and climb and climb. And there's like, okay, let's halt this little project for the moment. It was a cold day, open the far window in the server room, get out some extra fans, take the lid off the server, basically do everything you can to make the ambient temperature around it even colder than it was. And then also cut down the amount of multi-processing that we were doing on this one, because we were basically letting it just burn. And we cut that burn level well down, and it ran the rest of the weekend. And by the end of the weekend, my daughter had graduated MTSU, and and then because I'd been up until 3 a.m. That night, babysitting servers that were melting down. But by the time, everything was done, 12, 15 hours later, and we got back from graduation and the assorted things that happen after graduation, it was done with the process, but I was sweating bullets. And I'm thinking, I don't want to do that again. That was really bad. And so you think, okay, what can we do to let this thing, once you have the ability to run really, really fast, you don't want to give it up, right? So I want this thing to be able to run as fast as it needs to run, but I need it to not blow up anymore, because the not blowing up part's a pretty key element of a successful server. And so it came down to, what we really need is we need a much better cooling solution. So the servers that we have, because typically if you're hosting a bunch of servers, you want them to be, you want a lot of things from them. You want speed, you want them to be compact. In other words, you want the space they take up in your rack or wherever however you're housing your servers. You want to be able to stack a bunch of them together and not take up the moon. And if you're buying rack space, especially if you're co-locating them, you're paying per whatever percentage of rack you're using. That's how much your bill is for co-location. So when we first started hosting our servers for ComicBase, we had rented a half rack over at oh god, I forget the name of the place now, but it was right down on First Avenue in San Jose. And I remember that the guys who had the rack right next to us, they were almost like our rack buddies. That was moveon.org. which by the way, if you ever saw their server rack, you would laugh because not only it was about 15 servers on top of each other, but some of them were like leaning off, crouched off the back, like ready to fall over them. I mean, honestly, you get the feeling like if one hard shove and a major political organization will have toppled to the ground and been destroyed. But anyway, just weird. Anyway, yeah, don't co-locate if you can avoid it. You see the weirdest things down in the server room. Anyway, we haven't been co-located for a while, but I still cared about speed and I cared about space, not quite as much about the space. But the current servers we're in, they were still housed in kind of a cut down frame because we wanted them to be compact. Well, one of the problems with cut down frames is that cooling becomes harder. You have to have fans that are really, they're pounding the air, they're pounding it over a relatively small space, and it turns out it's just, if your thermals are going too hard, it's just a pain in the ass and to keep everything toasty. So we looked into the problem. We considered, well, what's it take to, do we need to migrate to an entirely different processor architecture that's more power efficient? Do we, what do we need to do? And honestly, the answer really came back, and I even asked Grok on this one. I said, no, you're fine. Everything's good. You just need to move this thing into a much more expansive case with a much better cooling solution. And so that's what we did. That happened, I want to say Monday morning. If you notice that the servers were down for about an hour. Was it Monday? Might have been Tuesday. I don't know. The days have been blurring lately. I apologize. Anyway, we basically have set up. It's now in a water cooled solution, which if you guys haven't done water cooling anymore, I strongly suggest it for any of your home computer builds. I've been doing it for a decade or so. It is absolutely the only way to fly. Much quieter than air cooled, just the fans. But basically, it's using water distributed through a radiator assembly with a fan to exhaust, or actually multiple fans to exhaust the heat that the cooling water liquid is moving off of the processor. But it winds up that it, because you can use bigger fans that are located further away from where the processor is, you can put them, it's almost like a remote control fan because you're moving the heat through the liquid. So you can use bigger, slower fans, and so they don't need to buzz quite as hard. So you don't get the sound of like someone's vacuuming if you're standing near the server. And honestly, for most times, if you're not doing crazy things like rebuilding 8 million pictures, the thing's damn near silent. So anyway, lovely thing. They do require a little more space than we had in our old server case beforehand. So with our new case for the new web server, we've moved into the whole thing. It's working beautifully. We actually ran a new build of all 8 million pictures again as a test, which we got to run at full speed, and it ran in, I want to say, something like 10 hours, which is, again, much better than like the 5 days it used to take. And during that time, we did that as a stress test. I think the highest recorded temperature we hit was 61 degrees Celsius, which is quite a bit better than, and that's with the full processor count, and again, just reserving just enough to run the websites while we were doing it. But with that said and done, I'm very, very happy about it. And one other nice feature I'm really stoked about this one is it had a feature on the case that I've never seen before, but once we saw that it was possible, we had to have it, which is to say the case has a built-in display. I'm used to like a little, digit display where, you can put like the thermals or one thing like that. No, this is actually like a full-on high-res, I think it's like a 1024 by 768 monitor built right into the case itself. And so you can put a fixed display on there. So when you actually go down to the server room now, it's got a fixed display where you just walk into the room and it's displaying all the thermals and the CPU loads and everything, all the network loads and everything. I don't need to go over to the console, but that's just right in there. And so like that was pretty neat. So if you guys are interested in that, I can give you guys a reference to where the case is. But yeah, and on your next custom computer build, I would strongly suggest that sort of thing because it's just kind of cool. All right. Anyway, with that said, we are updated on the new server. It's rocking a new 10 gigabit NIC as well. So we're been upgrading the office network, not the office network, but the infrastructure here. Right now, we're on a multi-gig NIC. Have the ability technically to go higher than the 2 gigs we're at right now. Technically, right now we don't have a need to serve more than the stuff to you at more than 2 gigs per second. But should we need the future ability to do that, we're building the infrastructure to support that. On a completely unrelated note, if there's anyone out in the audience who needs a old, I want to say it's G or N, but I don't believe it's Wi-Fi 6 yet, but it's if anyone needs an Amplify Ubiquity mesh network, we just happen to have one laying around the office for sale here. We'll make you a deal if anyone needs one. But that's about it. Someone says, how about a tour of the CB offices? Probably can't arrange that just right now, but we'll figure it out. Let's see. Okay, I'm just checking in the chat here right now. Proline is still around for comic supplies. I will look into that one. Neat. The part of comics says thumbnails are kryptonite. Not even sure. Newsstand editions are like kryptonite for Superman. Who would have guessed? Yeah, actually it was. Batman was sitting there, watching his brother melt down and not giving a damn, which is kind of like the relationship between those two characters in general. So, because Batman was like there in case Superman ran into trouble. That's a story. Okay, anyway, with all that said, the good news is we stopped messing with the servers for a while, so everything should be normal for as long as we know. I have no new upgrades planned on the hardware side for a while until we eventually bite the bullet and go multi-gig on things. But honestly, I gotta say, it's not in the immediate time frame so far as I know. All right, other things that are in the news. We are waiting on word for San Diego. We have put in a proposal for the ComicBase user group in there for Comic-Con. They tell me that they will let us know in the next couple weeks whether we can get on the schedule. I suspect it was a lot easier to get on the schedule when we were still exhibiting there all the time. But anyway, we will find out, and then I will let you know as we go. I'm going to be heading out to San Diego in any case, so I hope to run into as many as we can. But it'll be even more fun if we can have a meetup/user group meeting there. If so, we will try to be showing off some very cool new stuff, and I'm going to try not to give away all the surprises before then. And as far as other behind the scenes things, yes, new camera coming soon. So if you guys are watching the space before me, the other thing that's coming into the live stream very shortly is going to be this guy. I finally did get myself one of these PTZ cameras. It will actually be, I don't know, somewhere, because we used to have just an overhead camera that would point down, so when I need to show you something I was doing like at the keyboard or mobile apps or something like that, I could put it on the screen that way and show you the physical devices. But this is one, it's a PTZ, which means pan, tilt, and zoom. It's a camera that I can now zip around the offices and show you anything that's within sight. And we also even have the technology where I can, in theory, walk around with my mobile phone and use that as a web camera as we go, subject to exactly how much stuff is smart to show you on camera. But anyway, that is a thing that could happen. So look for those things to make their way into the show in the coming weeks, and they'll probably be coming in directly in relation to product demos that have to do with being able to show you things like that I might, I don't know, hold in my hand. Just saying. Okay, so with that said, let's get on to other things. All right, so ComicBase things in particular. So I made a big note to myself, make sure you tell people how to get updates before you tell you about all the things you've broken with ComicBase lately. So let's switch over to the demo machine if I can. And there we are. So in ComicBase, there's basically, and I'll shorten the spiel, but basically it's a couple times a year where we do forced updates, where basically we do a quarterly update where everyone who has ComicBase, before they download the weekly update, they get a note saying, hey, there's an update to ComicBase, 25.1, 25.2, 25.6, and then you have to download the program and install the new program before we can give you new content updates, because probably we changed something about how we deliver content updates in the major program update. Now, because I don't want to wear everyone out, and it does get exhausting at times, we don't show you every little thing that we've been doing. And for reference, if you've been following along, so let's go under help in the About ComicBase. So the way you read these version numbers here, so I'm running ComicBase 2025 Archive Edition over here. Version 25.6, that's the major version, so that's ComicBase 2025.6, because we did, when we released the Professional Plus things, it was a big kind of deal. It was almost like a whole new product release. So we, instead of counting 1, 2, 3, we counted 1, 2, 5, and then 6.3, which means we've had at least 3 things that, man, if you had the old ones, we sure will help you get the new one. And then build 4360, which means we've done 4,360 builds of ComicBase since we released ComicBase 2025, which is a hell of a lot of builds. That's a lot of time spending at the computer. Anyway, that's different times when you basically put the software together and you try to run it and you see what you get. With that said, typical build cycle. So if you think about, like, how long does ComicBase, like how many builds were there in ComicBase 2024? The answer was a number like 2,200, something like that, for the entire cycle. We are already almost double that number just within ComicBase 2025, which is to say we've been doing a hell of a lot of work on it, largely because we've been putting a lot of what would be next year's version into the later versions of this year's version. We're basically been getting ahead of ourselves. And you say, well, but how do I get all these new builds? Because we haven't put out another forced build for quite a while, not for several months, not since we did the big newsstand release, ComicBase 25.6. And the answer is, you go and you say, I want the interim releases. And the way you do that is you go up here under Setup, and you go to Preferences, and where it says Checking for Updates, I would suggest you set this to every time a database is open, because, why not? It takes, less than a second. But the important part is click this box which says check for interim updates, because if you have that, then every time we put out a build for any of the testers, including our internal testers, you'll get notified that, hey, there's a new build around. Did you want to download it? Now, you can download it or not download it at that point. It'll still be able to do the thing. But if you want to see every last thing that we've been doing, go ahead and put that on, because that'll let you see every little thing that we've been doing between the major, the forced updates that we do about once a quarter. Now, typically I'd say do this if you're like a fan, if you like seeing all the noise, because there's going to be some clunkers in there. I mean, I'm not going to kid you. I mean, there will be. I mean, there's going to be some things where, like, we thought we had a good build, but it turns out when we threw it on this thing over here, something went weird, and we did not want it to go weird, but it went weird, and so then a couple hours later, there'll be a new build which typically fix whatever the heck went weird. We also use it to try out features that we're not sure of entirely, where we'll put it out on the internal testing group. We'll say, like, hey, we're doing this thing like that. How do you guys like it? And we'll adjust as we go and try things out. Because one of the smarter things I'm going to say I did in the last 5 or 6 years ago is we did start a open testing group where we invite you ComicBase folks essentially inside the wire, and we let you in on our Slack group, where if you have an interest in that sort of thing, and if you do, please send me a note, and I will try to get to you in much more of a time frame than I've been doing in the last 2-3 weeks. But we basically will invite folks to join the internal group on Slack, where you actually get to watch the sausage being made. Now, again, it means that you will be exposed to buggy things. You'll be exposed to things that are not ready for prime time yet and everything, but you also get to shape how the software gets built and released, and we get we get the advantage of your early feedback, and it really makes the whole thing way better. So if you're interested in that, please send me a note, pbickford@human-computing.com. Put it up one last time, and we will send you an invite to the internal Slack group, and we can, like I say, you can be part of watching the whole thing get done. Now, with that said, if you have been watching the software get done, or for that matter, if you just happen to download ComicBase, because whenever you download ComicBase from the registrations page, you always get the last version, whatever it is, which, again, if at least 3 times in the last 3 months have been kind of like, there have been like bugs that are bad enough that if they were on software disks that we were about to press, we would have pulled the disks and repressed them with the corrected version. So that's why it's version 25.6.3 because there's been at least 3 times in the last 3 months where it's like, oh, that is a priority 1 bug. We want to fix that immediately. And anyone who happened to download it last night, we want them to be able to see that there's a new version available. Again, you would expect this with any software that's actively developed, but anyway, but like I said, that is, I'm not going to kid you, that is a risk. But with that said, if you have been part of the mix of seeing things, first of all, if you've been watching, like I just boot up my demo computer for the first time in about 3.5 weeks. We have pushed 500 builds. I think it's 480 some, but basically 500 builds since the last time that computer was on and running, which is to say we've been working our asses off here as far as pushing new stuff. What is some of the new stuff we've been doing? And well, if you've been inside watching the sausage get made, some of this won't be new to you, but two really, really huge efforts have been going on during all that time when I've been not doing live streams and doing other things. First one is that I've been working on the mobile apps. Now, you can't see that mobile app because that relies on App Store approvals and things like that. But because I've been working on the mobile app, it's forced also a number of issues into the main app that were kind of like, this was going to wait for later, but no, because we need it for the mobile app now, it makes its way into the servers and then in the in the main app a little earlier than we otherwise would have. So a couple of things that have been going on there. Number one, in the main app, the speed of pretty much everything has been getting much faster. I mean, just really, really much more rapid. We took a really huge run through all the things in ComicBase, and we said, hey, what can we do to, first of all, what takes more than just a blink of the eye to do? And there were a couple things that you guys are probably familiar with. One is downloading updates. The other major one is if you'd ever do rebuilds of lists. And there's a couple other things, but we basically went through all the core routines and then worked our way up from the core routines up to the whole things and said, how much, if we threw all the firepower in the world at this one, this is where all that multi-processing comes in and all sorts of really advanced stuff on it, what would be the fastest that this thing could ever be done? So, for instance, when you're downloading a content update, you're actually going and downloading a full copy of the entire database, comparing it to the database you've already got. So we get 2 of the copies of the world's biggest database, comparing it and then reconciling all the differences out, writing reports on the whole thing, updating prices, doing, downloading pricing updates and so forth. And you're doing all that stuff for millions. I mean, if you have the newspapers installed, it's something like 5 million items in a database. We managed to get that entire process on a computer that is, so the computer you're looking at right now is and this would be a great time to have the PTZ camera because I could zoom over and show it to you, is a little $270, I think $259 or something like dollar, mini PC. This is like the cheapest conceivable computer you could ever think of, because we wanted to play fair and also it's kind of neat to be able to run the thing on an incredibly cheap machine. But we can actually run a full up update. I ran it for the last 3 weeks, updating literally, better part of 1 million items in that whole time. Of millions of changes, and we can do that entire thing in less something like 6.5 minutes now on a little tiny mini PC, which means on your computer it's probably faster now. This is something that used to take several times that, but we have thrown just enormous amounts of work on that as far as getting that done. And yes, and there have been times where like, oh yeah, but we did that, but unfortunately it also broke this, that, and the other thing, and we then had to have 1 million builds where we fixed this, that, and the other thing. But at this point, it's actually looking pretty damn good, pretty damn solid, and it is really, really fast. So just to give you an idea of it, just when you're loading the updates themselves, when you probably saw that, when you're counting out the comics, it's going 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. It now counts by 5,000s. Other things count by tens of thousands or 25,000s at once. I mean, it's literally just going that much faster than it did. Other things it will do is at the end of things, it will go ahead and resolve your missing issues. So if there were things that you had named it one thing and we had named it something different, or the name had changed, it'll automatically put that in the right place. By the way, one minor show note on that one. late breaking change that we did on that one is if and this again comes in response to feedback we've gotten. One of the techniques we used to do to match up items that were misplaced. In other words, you had it listed under one thing, but we know that its official name is something else. One of the several techniques we use for that is barcode matches. So it's easy enough if I've got a full match on something to say, okay, well, barcode, 59606 16423 00111. That is really issue number 1 of Marvel Special Edition number 2, and it's really over here. That's no big deal. But there are other techniques that you could do with that one to say, well, I can take part of that thing, and if I can't find an exact match on the whole thing, what if I take the main part of it? It's like 59606, 012311, that should match to a particular title, Marvel Special Edition. And just because I don't have if I can find that, and I can't find your particular barcode, I could probably intuit that you've really got, it's in the wrong title, but it's, I can't necessarily know the issue number, but at least I can get into the right title, and let's say leave the issue number alone. That was one of the levels of matching we were doing. I've actually backed off of that particular one, and we use about 5 other techniques as well. But one thing that we found out just the hard way, and we've actually temporarily disabled, that for now, is that Marvel would do very weird things with their barcodes, where whenever they had a series that they thought we're never going to have this series again, one thing about barcodes is the first 5 digits are meant to be the manufacturer's number. The 5 digits after that are meant to be the series number. Marvel would do, because they don't care particularly, or at least someone in charge thought, close enough for government work, is they would reuse special edition series for very odd things. As long as the issue numbers worked out and they didn't dupe up themselves, it wasn't really a problem for them. But it adds some weirdness to the world. So we would find out that certain one-shot magazines, issue let's say it was the 2012, the 2022 Marvel Pinup Spectacular or something. They would put that down as, rando series code issue number 3. That's what the barcode would say. The cover of the comic book and the indicia for the comic would be like Marvel, Pinup Spectacular 2022. And so if you had not put your thing in the right place to start with, so you hadn't quite filed it where it should have been originally, and we had to guess what its right name should have been, we were actually catching the idea that Marvel was reusing the code and kind of putting it into this loose semi-series. Another one that came up recently was the 1939 Daily Bugle, was a one-shot rando series title thing, which they apparently assigned other numbers of that series, even though it wasn't really a series. They'd given those to other rando titles that they put along the way, like Free Comic Book Day issues and things like that. Because it caused so much confusion outside of Marvel, we turned off that one aspect. So in case that happened to you, that's what was going on. But honestly, if you get the issue eventually put into the right place, then it would go there anyway. And this only applied to when it wasn't in the right place and we had to guess. So if you put it in the right place to start with, this never happened to you. But anyway, in case you were wondering, that's now been addressed. All right, other things that have been going on. So speed is the big one. Like I say, everything that used to take a long time does not anymore in ComicBase. The updates very much, but everything large and small has gotten much faster. Another major effort that got keyed off in the last several weeks is title searching. So for instance, when you're over and you're looking at a particular comic book and you need to type, you're going to a particular thing. So if I'm going to say it's Spider-Man, and again, you just saw this on the world's dorkiest slow computer, right? And that's how fast I was able to type Spider-Man and have it chase, spider, and have it chase up to stuff. So here's Spider-Man, and stuff like that. But I mean, this is just silky smooth now, and this is silky smooth on a really, really crap computer. Another thing about it is that we've added in some other techniques on the whole thing, where, for instance, it has relevance ranking of the terms. So they're not always going to be in strict alphabetical order anymore. They're more in a relevance to how good a match you came up with. And the other thing it does is it remembers what you've been doing lately. So when you go ahead and say you've been working on a particularly title, I've been working on Spider-Man, I've been working on just the Amazing Adventures of Mighty Guy, whatever the title was. If that's the most, if you would type the Amazing Adventures of Mighty Guy, you can literally type an A, and that's all you got to put in. And the very first match, if that was the last tile you've been working on, will be Amazing Adventures of Mighty Guy. It's going to pop that one at the top because it's the most relevant to you. So we use a bunch of techniques like that. There's actually something like 23 levels of this that we're doing in the current thing, and we do them fast. So if you're interested, please check that out. Give us some feedback on that. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. But so far we think you're gonna really dig it. It's just neat. It just takes all the work out of getting anywhere as far as looking up stuff in the database. So anyway, feel free to have a look at that one. And let's see here. And cyberspaces, thanks for not forcing to match these things. Yeah, I mean, definitely, if the resolving missing issues and things like that it's an optional feature. You can just turn it off. You don't want any auto matching at all. I mean, you can just don't auto match. But let's say in general, when you download an update, you do want to try to get onto the same page as ComicBase whenever you can, because that's where things like price updates and cover updates come from. Is if you've called something like just my unique name for this title, that's all great. ComicBase will hang on to it. I mean, it's not going to throw your data away. It's in a way, it's your business, your database, right? But we can't add any value if we are not on the same page. So whenever we can be on the same page, where we can say, okay, and the current market price is going for this, and here's a better scan for that. That's actually where we can really be helpful. But if you do want to just I mean, it is possible. And people use ComicBase. There's like a university department at one point says, yeah, we want to use ComicBase to track our collection of bugs. Bugs? Yeah, insects. Yeah, we like the way you've organized the database. We want to have different slides with different things like that. And we're going to have to be like, well, I guess you can. You would just say, okay, here's the name of the species, and you make that as your title, and sample number 1 is whatever you want to call it, and bugs, you have it. So you can do that, but obviously those things, when they go and they look at if they were never to download a content update, they would see a number of non-matching items. So which presumably also don't have barcodes. But anyway, but yes, it's always good when we can be on the same page as each other. By the way, so we're getting to the time of the program, and I'm gonna probably have to get back to this one another day on some of the things I'd plan to get into. Because as I tend to do, I've gone long on different things. But let's do our standard announcements, because this is that time. So first of all, number 1, if this is the sort of thing you like, please do hit that like and subscribe to the live stream. It helps us a lot. 2, there is a ComicBase message board over at forums.comicbase.com, and they let us do things, including allowing us to get topics for a new live stream. So please, put that on there. There's a dedicated forum for that as well. And also there's a link over there to Andre's amazing ComicBase cover catalog, TM, available on there. So if you ever want to see what 1.1 million comic and other covers look printed out in a large format book that you could download yourself over a torrent link, yes, you could do that. That is a thing. Let me see here. Cyberspace says, get asked every week, can I turn that off? You get asked every week, which? Not sure. What do you get asked for? Anyway, the preference as to whether or not you want to auto match it's a preference in the downloads. It remembers your preference from last time, so that if you said I don't want to resolve missing issues, it's going to remember what you checked, so it'll default to whatever you did last time. But the dialog that pops up there, which is what are your update options, that's always going to show every time, because you might change your mind. We need to have some place for you to change your mind and do things differently. Okay. All right. So I think that should catch us up on those things. If I missed your spot at some point, please forgive me. We're trying. All right. He says, I clicked that I don't want to update. So if you're talking about updating the program, definitely. So if you're talking about how to update the program, if it says like there's an update to version blah, 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 I would definitely suggest updating to version blah, 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 because otherwise it's going to block. If it's a major one, it'll block your content updates until you have. If it's a minor one, you can still download content updates without doing it. But if you in general don't want to get program update notices, just turn off the option for interim updates, and then you'll only get the required ones, which happen about 3-4 times a year. But when those come out, you really do need to download the program update, because that's the time when we need, there's a couple times here where we do need to get everyone on the same page in terms of just, knowing that everyone here will have, let's say does or doesn't have a certain database field. We need to be able to assume that if you're running version 25.7 of the software, that database field will be there. Otherwise, the program just will get incredibly complicated for us to, you don't want us to be checking every database every time we have to do everything in order to maintain backward compatibility with version 1.0 of ComicBase. That it would be a nightmare for everyone. But anyway, if you're talking about the interim updates, if they're just too frequent for you, just turn off interim updates. If you're talking about program updates, I would just say download the program update is really where it goes. And if you're talking about, you don't want to get notified about content updates. So let's say for whatever reason you don't want content updates, just in preferences under setup, you go to preferences, just turn off when it checks for preferences. You can tell to check for updates never if you want. So that's a thing that you would do. Let's see. Yeah, so you might want to just go ahead and just if you're reading right, Steve from cyberspace, just turn off the check for updates thing on there, and that way the only time it will check for updates is when you specifically say I want to check for updates. So maybe that will be better for you. Okay, so with that said, and have I pretty much run the clock? Yes, I have run the clock out. Sweet. Excellent. All right, so let me talk to you about the things that I'm not talking about, but I'm going to have to promise to get to next time. I do apologize, guys. Sorry, I just want to get my computer back over here so I can go to my notes. I told you this one was going to be scattered, and did I deliver or what? Okay, a couple quick things. There was I talked a little bit about the auto resolve of titles. It's going to be a little bit, again, we dialed back partial barcode matches, and if you guys are barcode geeks, the fact that Marvel would even do that with their title sequence is I find vaguely shocking. On the other hand, kind of am I really not? No, I guess I'm not. Marvel's the same guys who gave us for years and years. They were just a model of indexing. You guys might remember, if you remember the 90s, Marvel was so good about keeping history straight. I mean, Bucky stayed dead. Uncle Ben stayed dead. I mean, there was a time in the 90s where they were just a model. And when they did Strange Tales, they had Volume 1. And when they were going to relaunch the series, it was Volume 2. And then they did Strange Tales Volume 3. And then they decided Strange Tales, when the fourth time they were going to restart the series, it became Volume 1 again. And then their all hope was lost. Because clearly, I think, God, I used to remember, if you guys look at the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, and I apologize to the guy who did it, but they actually had an official historian at Marvel for the longest time, who was just kind of there to keep track of canon and who did what where and so forth. And he was there forever. He wrote a whole bunch of books, but he's the main guy you'll see on the official history index of the Marvel Universe series. And I'm forgetting his name. I so apologize for that. But anyway, while he was there, they were much more spit and polish about things like, I don't know, barcodes and volume numbers and all the things that make indexing and finding comic books easy. And the people that succeeded them do not seem to have the same level of emphasis in getting these kind of tiny little details that indexers and people like that care about, getting those straight. So so it goes. All right. So things that I will be talking about next time. I swear to God, I really will. I'm not kidding. We'll be talking about adding new titles, adding new issues that were in the database, what to do if you says your database is locked, if your values are too big in the database, what could you possibly be behind it, what commas have to do with regional settings, finding issues you've entered recently. The short version, find for title issue date modified, but and some tips on dealing with autographed issues and special prices. So I think we're going to be doing a tech viewer questions special next time out there. Let's see here. And I think that's about it for me. Okay, well, guys, thank you so much. We will catch you on the next one. And I gotta scoot because I got more things I gotta do. And we expect to show you lots of cool stuff next time. Take care. Bye-bye.